going on YouTube? Salos, back with another video. Still sober today. Today I'm doing a response video to everybody else. The Cold Stone Classics. This is my first response video. I was watching everybody else's video. Everybody else had great picks. And I entertained the idea that I wanted to make this. I wasn't planning on making it at first. It seemed like kind of a disaster. I usually make things harder than they are. But what I ended up picking today are albums that, if I wouldn't have listened to these, I wouldn't be the black metal fan that I am today. These are all albums that I got into at the beginning of me getting into black metal, and that I still enjoy today. If you were to ask me a few years ago what was my favorite band, I would have told you hands down Bathory. When I first got into Bathory, I was listening to bands like Discharge, Amoebics, Nausea, and even Hellhammer's Apocalyptic Grades. And this fit in so perfectly, and I became super attached to this. I fucking love this more than I could say. Now, when it comes to the first four, nowadays, they sort of interchange which one I like the most. But if somebody had to tell me to just pick one, it'd definitely be this one. Now, I don't have an early pressing of this, so this was remastered after 1991, I believe, and all the pressings after that all have that remastered version. So I need a 1980s pressing of this, but this is the official Yellow Goat one from the Bathory box set in memoriam of Corthon, like a tribute box set. I haven't showed that yet, but I couldn't make this list without showing fucking Bathory. Next up, this is a band that was on everybody else's list. I picked a different album than everybody else, it seems like. This is my dad's favorite band, and now my favorite band. When I first heard this band, I wasn't really into it. I wanted fast and heavy, but what I didn't realize is you don't need to be fast to be fucking heavy. And a lot of my favorite bands have become growers, and this was definitely a grower. So a lot of people picked Morbid Tales, and most people think Morbid Tales and Emperor's Return are together, but I still think of them as separate. But I had to go with Megatherion. This is the first Celtic Frost album that I ever listened to. This is my personal favorite. If you think about the time that this came out, there wasn't really anything like it. If you think about the scene in America, bands like Possessed and Slayer, and the scene in Germany, bands like Destruction and Sodom, this was extremely different from everything else that was going on at the time. A lot pretty avant-garde and strange compared to a lot of the other first wave black metal albums, but I just love this so fucking much. This originally came out in 1985 on Noise. I have the first pressing, the Noise International, the American pressing, combat version. This is the original inner sleeve. Then you have the order forms. You have the Noise International order forms. Some of those t-shirts are pretty badass, you have to say. And then the original Prowling Death order form. This is pretty cool. I was happy to see that I got this. This is one of the albums that my dad is super jealous with, because he sold his collection off a few years ago, just like I've done the same thing. Just going through addiction, need money. But he's so jealous of this thing. I'm pretty happy to have this. I definitely need to get an upgrade of this one of these days, and to get the repress, because that thing's just really fucking nice as well. So the label, I know I showed this before. Next up, German band, another one of the first black metal bands I ever listened to. You need super balls deep into thrash. I discovered this. First I listened to Agent Orange and shit like that, but just backtracking through their catalog, and I found this. This is my favorite thing from their discography, other than Obsessed by Cruelty, but my favorite songs from Sodom are on this, especially Blasphemer. The Germans always have had great fucking lyrics. Cover, everybody knows this, hopefully. Nice bowl cut from Angel Ripper. So mine came with 2 lyric sheets. I don't know how that happened. He said if you haven't read the lyrics to this, do yourself a favor. Came out in 1984. So I have the American pressing on Metal Blade, but this originally came out on Devil's Game, and there is two different recordings, a re-recording for the German pressing and the original, which I forget who didn't like it, but I have the American pressing. I prefer the American pressing sound to the German one, but that's just me. I think my dad prefers the German one. It's whatever. It's the same music, but next up. So today I've been showing a lot of 80s black metal stuff, but that's the stuff I really began to love when I was first getting into this stuff. I had a more traditional route into black metal. I was obsessing over thrash and punk and shit for a long time, and my dad always pushed cool albums on me. And of course I got into bands like Sarcophago and Poison and Tormentor, which those are all great bands. And there's Holocausto and a bunch of shit. But those bands, even though they didn't get talked about for a long time, but up until recently they've gotten a lot of accolades, you could say. But a band I feel like that tends to get forgotten, that is one of my favorite bands from Germany, is Necronomicon. This is up there with the Creators and Destructions and Sodom. Even though Sodom and the Sign of Evil gets worshipped, and I worship it, I like this just as much. And I don't know why people don't like this. You have maybe the cheesy cover maybe keeps people away. You got the cheesy H.P. Lovecraft alien bat thing. But this is just so fucking great. Just the riffs. And their English is probably worse than Sodom and Destruction, which is saying a lot. And I don't think they get the context of some of the words that they're saying, but that is half the fun on this album. So you got 2 inserts. This is a High Roller Free Press. This originally came out in 1986. You got some photos. High Roller always does a really great job. And then the vinyl. The original pressing of this isn't that expensive. I usually like getting represses after I have the original copy, especially for the 80s albums. I'm willing to pay the extra $20 to get the original copy just for the nostalgia factor. Really dig that picture though. Definitely check out Necronomicon if you haven't heard it. I fucking love this shit. Next up, so it took me a while to get into Norwegian black metal. How I bought albums is I'd go to record stores with my dad and I'd pick blind buy shit. And when I was getting into 90s black metal, I asked my dad, and he didn't like bands like Darkthrone and shit. I don't know why. He got into death metal and all that stuff. Turned me on to that. But he said his favorite band from the 90s who played black metal would have to be Cement. And this is one of my favorite albums from the 90s as well. Now, their first 3 albums are complete classics. I prefer Worship Him, came out in 1991, but just because it's more primitive, more Hellhammer-ish, but Blood Ritual and Ceremony, the opposites, are great in their fucking own right. But this is my personal favorite. You got the back. This is a t-shirt logo. This was on the back of the original pressing. This is a box set. I'm not sure what year this came out. Century Media repress. Got the box. In case of the LP, which I like when it comes with CDs too. You can get both in one. Now, Samel was doing a very different thing, very mid-paced. A lot of the bands were fucking super fast, super distorted. It's a Necro. You got the back. Whoops. The box's contents. Lyrics, picture of the band, the goat. But Samel was doing different things in the 90s. I can't think of another band that sounded like Samel in the 90s other than Samel, and then the Greek scene. But another classic. Everybody's heard of this. Next up, now this would have to be my personal favorite Norwegian black metal album. This is Over Bertha. Now this is the first black metal album that I listened to that had the pagan acoustical influence. The first thing that I heard that kind of sounded like this was Bathory's later albums like Hammerheart and Twilight of the Gods. But when I found this, I just completely fell in love. And I couldn't get enough of this shit. I still can't. This came out in 1995 on Head Not Found. Now, when I first got into collecting vinyl, I collected thrash stuff and crust stuff and hardcore punk. But when I started collecting black metal, there's two albums that I really wanted to own. That was Over Bertha and Blasphemy's Fallen Angel of Doom. And at the time, the Fallen Angel of Doom there was a recent repress out, still a little bit pricey. I was looking at getting the first press of that, but then I really wanted to get this as well, and this was never pressed in vinyl until like 2013. And when I got this, I was so excited to get it. When I put it on, I felt like I went back to the time I first heard it, and just opening up the gatefold and seeing the pictures for the first time. I was really stoked on that. This does come with an insert. And you have shit about the recordings and stuff. Pretty cool. Next up, probably the very first black metal band from Norway I heard was Darkthrone. Now, I was in love with their first three, but for some reason I always skipped Panderfaust. And since I've got into Celtic Frost and Hellhammer, I was always looking for bands that emulated them, and it was right under my nose the whole time. It was fucking Darkthrone. Not only did Darkthrone emulate Celtic Frost and Hellhammer the best, in my opinion, but they also added their own aesthetic and music from their previous albums as well. This came out in 1995 on Moonfog. This is my favorite Darkthrone album. Now, as a fan of A Blaze on the Northern Sky, longer than this, and I fucking love that album. But when I listen to Darkthrone, this is the one I listen to. All my favorite songs are on here. You got Quintessence, which is just classic. Triumph of Gleam, which is probably my favorite on this release, and A Horde of Nebula, which is another fucking classic. But Darkthrone is Darkthrone. Next up, now I love Greek black metal. It's the other type of black metal that when I first got into this style, I really fell in love with. I was going to show a Rotting Christ, but I actually love Bathory more. And the Majesty album, their first album from '93, is great, but I prefer this one. I'm not sure how to say it, but this is from 1995. Great black metal. Now, this might not be as raw or anything as the Norwegian scene, but I think this is just as good. Now you have the melody and the melancholy, and then the acoustical influences are still there, which I personally love that shit. Don't know why. But this is a overlooked classic, I think, too. The Greek scene in the 90s doesn't get talked about at all. Don't know why. This is a gatefold. Now, they were really young when they put this out. Same thing with their other album. Now, these would be... This one, like I said, would be my favorite. But if you haven't listened to this is fucking perfect. I wouldn't change anything about this album. Definitely have to have some Greek black metal. At least for me on my list. Next up. Now this is a blind buy. Up until recently, these guys haven't got the recognition that I feel like they deserved. And as I said earlier, me getting into bands was mostly on blind buys or recommendations from people or friends. And I bought this at a local record store, Launch Records, said it a couple times. Now this is Judas Iscariot with Cold Earth, Slept Below. This was the first Judas Iscariot that I heard, and at the time I didn't know anybody who liked these guys. I was just getting into black metal. The only American black metal band that I heard before this was Vaughn, and I put this in, and this is just fucking perfect as well. And I bought this with Exasper's first album, and that was my introduction to American black metal. And if it wasn't for me buying those two albums, I wouldn't have got into a lot of the American black metal bands that I love as quick as I did. Because now these guys get recognized, but it seems like there's favorites of the week or the month, and everybody gets into the same band, the same week, and has all the shit, and now this is one of those bands. But I feel, it's just so crazy how I ran into this. I got this for like $2. It's like, just fucking awesome shit. And he always got goofy corpse paint on, of course. Just a prime example of how good American black metal can be. And I know it's been ragged on a million fucking times, but fucking love it. Next up, black metal band from Ukraine. Nope. Skipping one. So, as I've said before in a previous video, Finland is my favorite country for black metal, and I would say this is the quintessential Finnish black metal release. I know this is a band that doesn't get talked about a lot, and doesn't get talked about enough, but this is, I'd say, the earliest prime example of Finnish black metal and the Finnish sound. And from what I gathered from interviews and stuff from the bands, this was a really important band for the formation of the Finnish sound altogether. The melodies are there, the folk pagan influences are there. This is a Shadowgrat with Wolfe der Nacht. I don't speak German. These guys are NS, so if you're worried about that. But I'd say, if it wasn't for these guys, I know there's a lot of important bands from the Finnish black metal scene, but this came out in 1999, which there's a few other releases before that, but their release from 1996, Crushing the Throne of Light, is just as good as this. I just prefer this, but both of these are really important. And if you listen to modern Finnish black metal and you listen to this, there is the newer Finnish bands seem to emulate this sound really good, and I searched for the origin of the Finnish sound, and the band I found was this, Shadowgrat with Wolfe Dernak. Fucking classic. All of these are classic. Got 3 more. Nope, I got 4 more. So going to the Ukraine. Now, I'm not the biggest Emperor fan in the world, but what Emperor do for other people, Nocturnal Mortem does to me. This is their demo from 1996. Their one from 95, the Twilight Fall, was definitely good. But this is not a fan of symphonic black metal, but I'm a fan of this. After I discovered Ulver, I was on the search for pagan black metal, or pagan-influenced black metal, and I ended up finding this. This is my favorite album to listen to in the wintertime. Extremely cold. It's probably one of the coolest album covers I've ever seen in my life. It's a gatefold. This wasn't pressed on vinyl until 2004 by No Colors and Oriana. It's an Oriana production. Cool moon on the back. But a lot of people like Nocturnal Mortem, but I don't think they've ever beat the atmosphere with what is on Lunar Poetry. The label is just simple. And it being a No Colors release, it's like, I've seen worse No Colors releases, but this could be better. I really want this to be repressed just to have a nice sturdy copy of this. But just fucking beautiful album. Extremely cold, atmospheric, symphonic. An album that sends chills up my spine. Now moving to a different style. Another German band. This is my personal favorite black thrash metal band after the 1980s. This is Disaster. Now, their first album came out in 1995. This is their 2002 album. Now, this is my favorite. I enjoy all the Disaster albums, but this is just all the riffs on this are just fucking, they just slaughter your soul. I can't pontificate how good this album is. Now, I know a lot of people might be Disasters fans, and their newer albums have gotten a lot of listens, but nothing beats this shit. Cool negative photo in there. And this band harbors back to the sound of Destruction, Necronomicon, Poison, shit like that. Of course, Sodom. Definitely really good Teutonic, thrashy black metal from Germany. Next up, I have 2 sort of modern classics. These have been released like over 10 years ago. So if an album is still getting press, like 10 years later, I would consider it a classic, especially how much these 2 bands are worshipped. And these are 2 of my personal favorite albums. I would have never discovered this band unless it was for Judas Iscariot and me discovering Exaster. I ended up finding Leviathan, and through Leviathan I found Lurker of Chalice. Now, I found this pretty early into my black metal listening, and I'm really glad I did. I have so much of an emotional attachment towards this album. It's kind of crazy to believe. I don't listen to it that much today, but I've listened to this more than any other album. Gotten me through a lot of tough times, struggling with a lot of bad times in my life. Now, this came out in 2005 on Southern Lord. Now the vinyl, I'll show you. These are the original inserts. I'm going to show one of the vinyls. I've showed this before. And you got the Lurker logo right there. Now, I prefer Lurker Chalice over anything that Leviathan has done. I do enjoy Leviathan, but I prefer Lurker over it. I don't listen to Lurker that much anymore, but this has had a special place in my heart forever, and will continue to do so. Maybe one day I'll be able to listen to this, but I have a lot of hyper memories attached to this, so definitely a classic. I assume a lot of people would agree with that. Next, this is probably my second favorite Finnish black metal album, next to that Shadowgrat, that's how you say it, Satanic Warmaster with Krallian Satan Madness. This is their third album from 2005. This is my personal favorite. I love everything Werewolf has done, but I have a big attachment to this as well. This came out in no colors. This is the 2005 pressing, gatefold. Now this isn't groundbreaking, this isn't changing the format of the music, but it's fucking one of my favorite bands, and my favorite album from my favorite band. Now I have the red version of this, which is just beautiful. Blood red. But I don't know what else there is to say about Satanic Warmaster. I've already talked about this before, so I don't want to make myself redundant. But if you haven't listened to anything on this list, definitely do so. I stand by every single one of these albums. They all have a special place in my collection. And if it wasn't for some of these releases, I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't be the black metal fan I am today. And a lot of these albums open up new doors and sort of new branches of the black metal tree for me to discover more bands. So, thank you guys for watching my video. You guys can like, subscribe, dislike, unsubscribe. I don't care. Thanks for watching. Go fuck yourself.